This from one of Peter Gray's excellent books, Free to Learn, Why Unleashing the Instinct to Play Will Make Our Children Happier, More Self-Reliant, and Better Students for Life. So I've just got a bunch of things about play. Like, let's talk about play here. So he's quoting here a 1994, his book was published in, I forgot, I don't have it here. His book was published more recently. I want to say 2014, but I think I'm making that up. 2013. And he's discussing here a 1994 description from an anthropologist named Martini about children in Polynesia on the basis of Martini's extensive observations of children on the Marquesan island of Uapu. I have never been, I don't know how to pronounce that. In the South Pacific, researcher Mary Martini wrote the following. 13 members of a stable playgroup were observed daily for 4 months and less systematically for another 2. Children ranged from 2 to 5 years old. They played several hours a day without supervision while their siblings attended school nearby. They organized activities, settled disputes, avoided danger, dealt with injuries, distributed goods, and negotiated contact with passing others without adult intervention. They avoided adults, probably because adults disrupted their play. The play area was potentially dangerous. A strong surf broke on the boat ramp. The large rocks on the shore were strewn with broken glass. The valley walls were steep and slippery. Children played on a high bridge and high, sharp lava rock walls. Remember, this is children ages 2 to 5. Machetes, axes, and matches were occasionally left around, and young children played with these. In spite of these dangers, accidents were rare and minor. Hitting, teasing, and scolding were frequent, but fistfights, tantrums, and prolonged crying were rare. Disputes were frequent, but were dissipated after a few minutes. Children did not seek adults or older children to settle conflicts or direct their play. This is what functional play and childhood look like.
Right. And you need to map the scolding that would come to you if you took this lesson to heart and you engineered a world in which these lessons could be learned by children in the way that they are learned in other parts of the world. You would be potentially accused of child abuse. And
right. Here, you could become America's worst mom.
You could take over for Lenore, but I couldn't. I guess I could now.
By the way, her 2 boys are both young adults now and successful and
fine human beings
and thriving and alive human beings. Yes.
But I'm reminded. I hope I have the story right. But Martin Mullen, who is the prime mover behind the marble machine from which the music, Venturgaton.
Is that how it's pronounced? Okay,
Martin, get in touch. We need to talk. But anyway,
the theme music for DarkHorse.
The theme music for DarkHorse. He describes playgrounds.
Yes.
In which they're, wood with nails sticking out of it, just, playgrounds from hell in which children actually learned how the world works.
But no, I mean, this is a movement, I think, in Europe, and I don't think it's really spreading to the US yet, but these intentional playgrounds that have these risks in them.
Hazards.
Right. And you say playground from hell, but it's not like this is a playground that was created for, utopia and has been allowed to fall into disarray. This is a playground that has been created with the risks embedded in them.
Let's put it to you this way. If you look at the marble machine and you think about what it implies about the person that put it together, that person spent time on these playgrounds with hazards allowed to actually explore and figure out how to build stuff. And, it created a genius mind. Right. Now, you can't say how much of that was the nails sticking out of the boards, but something about this worked. And so anybody who would question it as obviously wrong doesn't know what they're talking about, which, I don't know. I'm sure kids get hurt in those playgrounds.
Yep, I'm sure they do.
But the point is, the fact that children get hurt is not evidence you're doing something wrong, because, again, it's the adults that you're putting at risk if they don't get hurt.
And, as with all of these long-term questions, it's very hard, if not impossible, to do the experiment because the control is so far out and it just requires longitudinal tracking. So, you want to compare, we would want to, and it's not going to happen, compare the children who spend time in those playgrounds with the children who don't, but not as children. Like, sure, you can compare injury rates and even death rates as children, but also look at how they do as adults, and the various indicators of health and productivity as adults. And the prediction here, which has been made across domains, in many different specific ways with regard to the value of risk and adventure and play in childhood, is that those children who are exposed to such things as children are much more functional and productive and healthy and frankly capable of avoiding real harm as adults.
Right. Yeah. Which does not mean that it can't go wrong.
Of course. Of course it can. And how we are lucky.
We are lucky.
We have our willingness and in fact insistence on exposing our children to risk, none at first, right? This is not a just expose children to risk. There's a developmental period, and you don't want your newborn to ever think that you don't have their back. And we talked about this either last or a week or two ago. But the older they get, the more capable they get. Letting them take more and more risks, getting farther and farther away, because they now are secure in the knowledge that they have one or two loving parents, and hopefully more kin and more friends around them who will come for them if they need it. And that allows them to take more and more risks, such that when they do step over that threshold into adulthood, they are actually really capable and really able to determine, when they encounter things they've never encountered before, how to assess, how to decide what to do next.
I think it also makes sense to just point out that, there's no great way of doing this, right? Allowing your children to face risks means running the risk that something bad will happen.
Yeah.
And the way we've managed it is we have rules, right? And, the rules in our house are: you're allowed to break your arm. You are not allowed to damage your eyes, your neck, your skull, your back, but you are allowed to break an arm or a leg. We don't want it to happen.
Your sensory organs and your central nervous system are off limits.
Off limits.
Yeah.
And, if it happens, we'll take care of you. But, but the point is, anything you do that results in an injury near your eye, the question is, were you in danger of violating that rule? Because then you're doing something wrong.
And this is consistent with not all injury is the same, not all harm is the same. And frankly, this is going to seem like we're going way off the rails here, but I'm reminded of the way that Me Too went stupid, right? Where was it Matt Damon who I think who said basically that frankly sexual assault is different from being patted on the ass when you don't want to be patted on the ass. And, some people will say, well, that was sexual assault. Actually, there are different degrees of awfulness, and we need to be able to talk about it. And there's different degrees of injury. And so, if any time your kid falls down and gets a scrape, you run in with your, bucket of first aid kit, and you make sure to slather it with iodine, you make sure to put a Band-Aid on it, you make sure to kiss it and tell them it's all going to be okay. Well, they're going to think that might have been the worst thing that could ever happen to them. And anytime anything that happens to them and someone doesn't come in with their bucket of first aid, they're going to think they're being mistreated. And, we didn't apply very many Band-Aids to our kids growing up. And it's not because they didn't have scrapes and wounds. We said, okay, get back on the bike then. And, sometimes it can feel like, but I just want comfort right now. And sometimes comfort is what's necessary. But as you started saying, and as now I do too, it's about the future. What happened. There's no changing it. You can overlay your story on it, and I can overlay my story on it. But what happened. If we can both agree that whatever it was wasn't good and would be better if it didn't happen next time, what can we learn from it? How can we move on? Let's go have fun again, but do it while reducing the risk that the thing that just happened doesn't happen again, or reducing the risk that it does happen again.
I will also just maybe as a final cap on this, there's something about situations that are actually dangerous, that the most important thing about these situations is that you not lose your cool, right? The most important key to getting out of a situation that you might not get out of is staying calm, so you can think carefully about what your actual options are, what is actually available to you that isn't immediately obvious, these things. And the problem is, if you insulate somebody from harm, they tend to freak out when anything goes wrong, and then they become a hazard to themselves.
Yep.
And, it's like, when we were kids, you and I didn't know each other as kids, but growing up in LA, you go to the beach, somebody has to tell you actually that when you start getting pulled out by a riptide, it's not an infinite phenomenon. If you stopped fighting, it would give you up at some point and you would be able to swim away. Whereas if you try to fight it, you'll exhaust yourself. If you swim parallel to the beach, you can get out of it, right? But, if you are prone to panic and the first time you experience a riptide, you're an adult and nobody takes an adult aside and says, by the way, there are riptides. And if you get into one, don't panic. It'll let you go, or swim parallel to the shore, right? If nobody mentions that to you, because nobody talks that way to adults, then the point is you don't know what to do and you may drown.
Yeah.
And so, I've been lost in the Amazon with people, and the ability to laugh about it and to realize, we might actually be out all night. Could happen, but we'll find our way back. There's a river. We can figure out which direction from us it is.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there are a lot of rivers, but
right. But the point is, there is a way out of this. It may not happen immediately, and it may not be comfortable in the meantime. But
well, but I mean, when you're actually lost in the Amazon, I was once and only once really felt like I was truly lost and I was all alone, and I thought, I actually am not sure what to do here. The stakes are very high, right? Because when you're actually deep, you're hundreds of miles from any permanent settlement. And, there's one direction, there's one field station somewhere near where you left from. But if you really can't figure out which direction it is from where you are, because you've entered some sort of Bermuda Triangle of the Amazon, that's what it felt like in my case. You gotta get exactly that, or else you could be walking forever and, probably will never see anyone ever again.
Well, that's the problem, especially at night. You are in danger. Once you've made one error, it's very easy to compound it because especially, everything looks the same. You think it doesn't all look the same until you're off trail and you 3 meters off and everything looks new. And
it's amazingly difficult to find trails. Like if you've only ever been on trails that are maintained by, a weird style organization, right. Then it feels like, well, at least as soon as you find the trail, you'll know. It's like, no, you can just walk right across the trail if you're off of it. And
once you've done it, if you think the trail is that way, and you walk that way and you walk over it, which is especially likely at night, then you don't know whether the trail is yet farther or you need to turn around. And once you've started talking yourself into one of these things or the other, you can just compound the problem dramatically. So the thing is, in that case, it's certainly the panic that gets you too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and if you start thinking, all right, at least I want to know if I'm walking in circles. I need to mark, as I move, I need to mark so I at least know how to undo what I just did. Right. So that sort of thing.
Yeah. So the moral of this story is carry flagging tape
everywhere. Yes, especially downtown.
For sure.